Hello there, Sorry from 17 once again. This is my ReCore walkthrough. This is mission 9, it is the core Foundry. This is a 30-minute video, so it actually enables me to really go into just appraising the game, hopefully giving you some tips and advice on how to get past what you're doing, and just an understanding of how things work. Because ReCore is such a fascinating study for me. A lot of people are going to write this game off as just old school and bad. Darkside Phil's actually quit playing it. He's done almost a polite quit this time rather than a rage quit. And when he was playing it on stream, he seemed to be having a decent time. He seemed to think the game was okay. But of course, he had 400 people in his live stream, and then by the end of it, there was only 200. So of course, it has nothing to do with the fact that he's boring. It's everything to do with the fact that the game's boring, because it's never him. Of course, he's infallible. He's the Pope's dad, and he's going to stop because nobody then watched it on YouTube, because of course if it doesn't make views, he doesn't care, because he's Mr. Views, even though he spends a large majority of his day telling you that he doesn't want to be Mr. Views, and then he goes on to speak about nothing but views. And don't get me wrong guys, when you're on YouTube and you're making a living from it, views are very important. But I don't think people want to hear how important views are every fucking day. I would love to chew your ear off about views, but unless you've done it, you don't really have much understanding of what it means. Because YouTube is one of those games that it's constantly changing, things don't mean the same that they used to mean, and unless you're in it, you generally don't find it that interesting. And the worst thing about YouTubers is that we find that shit interesting. So, I've always found that fascinating, and I'm curious what you folks think. Like, if you've never been on my channel before and you're listening to this video, there's generally a few paradigms of people that I come across in my comments. Of course, I come across the people who are quite new to the channel and they enjoy the discussion, they want to be part of it, and they'll leave something rather positive along the lines of like, I loved the video, or I loved your commentary, very thought-provoking, or insert, you know, kind of platitudes that people say when they like something that they don't know. And they're always great, and who knows, you might have a fan for life, or you might have somebody that, you know, just watches every so often. Then you have the person in the middle ground who didn't necessarily dislike what you did, but they would have wanted you to do it slightly different. Like, why are you having this conversation now about people in the comments? You should be talking about the game. A walkthrough is people walking people through exactly what's happening in the game. And I think there's some truth to that, there's some merit to it, but everybody has their own style, and it's one of those styles I've moved away from. I do that occasionally if the game demands it, but the one thing about ReCore is it's the least demanding game I've ever fucking played. You know? This walkthrough doesn't need to exist. I'm doing it because I liked parts of this game, and I want this to be on my channel because I think there's something here. There's something to it that's worth representing. But at the same time, there are so many baffling design decisions that I have to talk about them. And a lot of people can confuse critique and appraisal and discourse as bitching and whining, which leads me to the third type of person who finds my videos. Those are the people who do not like talking on videos, which, you know, it's all preference at the end of the day. Oh, by the way, did you see that dude just then? He was being buffed by one of those little shit robots. The rule of thumb in this game, get rid of the little shit robots immediately. They are the worst. They will make your life miserable, so get rid of them. Isn't it interesting that this room has this awesome design of these saws on the walls, but they don't interact in any way or play into gameplay? This could have been a timed fight where they were moving in towards the centre, and this could have made this really tense and actually challenging, but instead it's just a wonderful design aesthetic and no implication on gameplay, which I think is wasted opportunity. Even though I'm not a big fan of being timed at anything, because I like to take my time. But keep on using your affinities. You've got two colours now, so maximise on the blue. You've also got two robots that are both yellow and blue, so swap between them for lethals on appropriate targets, and you'll do more damage, and you'll just become a better player, in theory, right? But that latter person is the person that doesn't like me talking on the video. They don't like how I talk, they don't like what I say, they don't like how I sound, they disagree with what I say, they have their own impression on what should be in a video and what shouldn't, and I'm of course on the list of things that should never be in a video, and they don't like it, and they're either vocal about this, or they'll leave a dislike, or they'll just not watch again, and those are the three that you get. But the one thing that is universal in my videos, I like to think, outside of, you know, the ones who really don't like what I'm doing, which is fine, you know, there's lots on YouTube, you can't like it all, there's plenty of stuff I dislike. You know, it's just human to like and dislike and favourite and and not so much appreciate. But the one thing I like to think that I bring to everything I do, regardless of if you're interested or not, is I bring something that you don't regret listening or watching. I like to think that if you watched one of my videos, and even if you didn't love it, you don't feel like you wasted your life, because we either talked about something interesting, I either gave you a strategy that you didn't know existed, or you learned something, or you were helped in some way, or something like that. I don't think at any point I would say one of my guides or projects is bad or indeed boring because of the game. And don't get me wrong, there are boring parts to gameplay, but boredom while playing a game, I think, is inherently a reflection of the person. I really do. You know, I play Dynasty Warriors games, I get bored. That's a reflection of me and my enjoyment of those games. There are people who love those fucking games and put thousands of hours in them. They don't feel the same as I do, nor should they, nor should I expect them to. And when it comes to a YouTube video, don't get me wrong, I believe that there will be boring videos out there, and I'm under no illusion that there'll be people who find my videos boring, which is fine. But I like to think that it's my job or my responsibility to alleviate that boredom in some ways. And I might fail at it if you don't like it, and I might succeed at it if you do. This is another arena room, by the way. This is your first introduction to one of those enemy spawner creatures. This feels to me like it's suffering from the Bloodborne AI problem, where if you ever played Bloodborne at launch, if you played your console for a little bit too long, the AI system would leak, and it would cause bosses to repeat one move and never do anything else, and it really fucked them up. And it turned potentially dangerous bosses into just dribbling idiots, and they were very easy, and you could exploit it and get a lot done. Many did. And it sucked, because that's not how those bosses are supposed to be. But this is the kind of creature in this game that feels like it's that. It feels like this is a boss that has 9 phases, but it doesn't know how to swap phases. Like, they didn't turn it on, you know, it's Dark Souls 3 and poise. It's there, but they forgot. Like, I don't get it. Really strange. So this is never going to be a dire encounter or any kind of threatening scenario, because all you do is shoot the glowing exhausts and kill the dudes with him. And it's really simple because the auto-aim is very, very fast when it works. And I say when it works because changing auto-aim can be a pain in the dick. Getting to the dude you want is a nightmare. When there's 3 different coloured dudes and one of them you want to instantly extract, getting to him can be a pain. And I'm not a fan of that. I think if you have to knock the analog to swap between targets, the direction you knock the analog should be where the lock-on goes. So if there's one guy to your left and one guy to your right and one guy above you, if you flick upwards, it should go to the one above. You shouldn't have to flick right 4 times or whatever when it goes left, right, up finally. It's not good enough. And the one thing, this is quite a frustrating piece of platforming as well, until you realise that it's best to jump off the end of this and chase the machine. Because if you don't, you'll miss it. But going back to what I was saying, as we enter another arena-style room that's got a couple of good fights in it, it's got a nice design with some environmental fire on the floor, which is going to move between these 3 panels to keep you on the move, which is a cool idea, and it gives you some... There's a dynamic touch to this particular battlefield that I do appreciate, even though it is very simple. The enemies up there as well, you'll notice how their life looks kind of funny. It's because they have a shield on. When someone has a shield, you have to hit them with a charge attack, and it will usually stun them. So, do not waste time with shields, always hit them with a big stun. But as I was saying, sorry, can't quite remember where I got to on my point, but the moral of my point was, I feel if you're somebody who does commentary on videos, it is your responsibility to make that commentary interesting. You cannot rely on the video game to be stimulating enough and to inspire what you say. You have to make it inspiring. And I don't mean you have to, you know, quote some kind of philosophical, famous passage or any kind of proverb or anything like that. I just think that you're in charge of where the commentary goes, and if the game is not particularly stimulating at that point, you should be stimulating yourself. And you can't blame the game for it. And that is one of the many reasons that I have disagreements with a certain YouTuber, because that's what he does, and it's a system of believing yourself to be without blame, and it comes from a lifetime of delusion, unfortunately. And, you know, we're all deluded to an extent, and I do think that there can be positive delusions, but that one is not. that was interesting then as well. We've come across a full inventory too, so you're going to see what you have to do once you filled your inventory. And if you're wondering, your inventory is those squares. So once you fill that, you cannot pick anything else up until you go back to the crawler and you do the 2 mandatory loads, which I just think is completely unacceptable in a game like this. I really do. But I want to talk about how this game safeguards its content. That's interesting too. Did you notice how when we got to that position it was a picture of Seth rather than attach? Would it have been so difficult to enable you to do the moves if you didn't have the specific follower on screen? I don't think it would have been. It's another design choice that does nothing but hinder progress. There's a section coming up, and I think I'm going to leave it in, where I'm doing a time-trialed run of one of those traversal dungeons, and I'm going for the time, so I'm trying to do a nigh-perfect run, and you don't need a perfect run to get them, but you need a pretty good one. And I do the first 2 sections flawlessly. I look like I was born to platform. And then I go and I jump towards one of those tracks with Seth on, without realising I don't have Seth because my buddy's behind me and I've been super speedy. So I run towards it and I hold X, and of course I don't fucking have him. And it's just that moment of, it could have ruined the run, and I did everything perfect up to that point, except for that. And don't get me wrong, folks, that's my fault, because the game works in a very specific way, and I didn't have the right guy on. I am 100% to blame. But can you think of the games where you don't need to have it directly on, and it still triggers and it still procs? I can name a few games that work just like that have come out in the last 10 years and made themselves better games because of it. And I just think it would be one of those things that it doesn't take away from anything. It's not like the difference between Witcher 2 and Witcher 3, whereas in Witcher 2 you could use the wrong sword for the entire game, and the game would not be like, he's using wrong sword, dickhead. It wouldn't do that. It just let you do what you wanted to do, and you'd be like, I'm doing no damage, what's happening? While the game and everybody watching laughs at you, because you're using silver on a human. Whereas on Witcher 3, the dude spent more time fucking with his swords than he did fighting, because if you pulled the wrong one out, he was like, oh, put it back. Like, no, Geralt, I would like a sword, please. We're in a fight. Somebody's attacking me. Can I have this, please? Nope, we'll put it back. And all the time, the dude's putting his swords away, so you just look like some kind of weird Tourette's man. And I hated it. Hated it. I would have preferred to look like a retard, picking up the wrong sword and attacking people with the wrong weapon, than him constantly auto-correcting for me. And it's convenient and it's nice, but it's an example of these systems should only really be present if they benefit the player, I think. There are some games that will never do that. ReCore is a game that just doesn't do that. It doesn't do that in any facet of its gameplay. It seems to almost take pleasure in making the gamer jump through hoops that if they didn't exist, the experience would be more streamlined and the whole experience would be more fun. Like this right now, every time I get a core, I'm dumping lower level cores to pick up a new core. And I'm doing this because I don't want to miss out on good cores. But should I really have to when I only have like 25 fucking cores? Is 25 cores really too difficult to carry? I don't know. There's so many choices in this game I don't understand. Which leads me to the topic of this discussion, which is the gate guardians of ReCore. So in this game you do not have, you know, the ever so vexing rhymes of Para and Dox, the 2 brothers who have those cards, Suijin, like Kazijin, and like the other Jin that I forgot. We don't have those, but what we do have is brick walls of, you should not be here. And it's done in 2 ways. The first one is cores. If you do not have enough cores to access a zone, you just can't. Flat out cannot do it, so you have to search for more cores. And I don't think that this is that bad. I think the cores is understandable outside of the tower. Up to the tower, the cores are kind of linear. It's a progression, I get it. And it reminds me of Mario 64, because I was thinking the other night, can I think of a game where they completely deny progress based on an arbitrary number, which I still completely respected and enjoyed? And immediately I go to the Mario games. And I'll never quite forget that corridor with Bowser. And I don't quite remember the requirements, but I'm almost certain it was something along the lines of, if you didn't have enough stars, there was a corridor of infinity. The corridor just never stopped, unless you had enough stars to get to the final zone, and I think it was the lava level with Bowser. And I can't remember how many it was, because I haven't played that game since it came out a very long time ago. What was it, 96, 97? Wow, God, time flies. It's a long time. And I never had problems with that, because I appreciated that each of these zones were numbered with how many stars I needed to get there, and there was always another place to go to get stars. And that was the progression system, wasn't it? There was with the paintings, you jumped in them, you got the stuff, you came out, you got to the next one, and you just went through like that. That was how the game worked. Ooh, that was an example of Jewel not grabbing a ledge that in other dungeons or in other circumstances she very well might have. So I've left that in again to show that there are moments where it can seem like you should have grabbed them, but I'm assuming I just wasn't high enough for that particular one. And you need to be aware of this. Or did I say at the beginning of this guide, like 80% chance that it'll work? Just be aware of it. There's also a pretty fun way of cheating this next section. And falling off here wasn't a bad thing, because I forgot to extract the key, so that actually worked in my favour, which is nice. But in the next room, you can stand on the shelf, on the rock, so you don't have to mess about with the platform, and you can take your time, and it makes it quite easier. I thought that this blue screen would stop me from moving through it, and it didn't, as you just witnessed then. And once again, folks, I would normally trim a lot of this to give the illusion that, you know, everything went smooth and it's kind of like a perfect run. But I haven't had opportunity to speak at all in this walkthrough too much. I've been able to explain certain things and talk about other things, but I haven't really had a session where I can get down onto topics, and this is the first opportunity, so I'm going to keep it. And as I was saying, there is ways that this game gates progress, and the one that's quite famous for me is in Mario. And I think that it complemented that game. Was it kind of frustrating that you might have needed more than you should? Definitely, but in those days, that was a mechanic that most games did. They were unlock requisites for a lot of things, and that's just how gaming was. We didn't look at it as something strange. It was just how the games worked. So then we skip forward a few years to this game, and then we have evidence of it again, where you need a certain amount of cores to hit these dungeons. And I thought the reason for this was because of the difficulty. I thought that if you needed a lot of cores, you would be going into dungeons that were really challenging, and you needed a measure of experience in the game before you could understand or even approach them. But that's not the case. A lot of the dungeons that are really high level are short. And don't get me wrong, I've not played the super high level ones, so I assume that they get nuts, because I expect them to, and I hope they do, because that's the point of post-game dungeons. They should be ridiculous, in my opinion. But the ones that I've been in really didn't merit the levels. And then you have the second point, which I think is the worser one still. So whenever you're in a game where there are leveled enemies and leveled character, you will come across moments where A, you fight something that is higher level than you, or B, you get into a situation where you aren't high enough level to be. These are moments that any game that has those two mechanics will inevitably come across at some point. And it all depends on how the game controls these scenarios to how successful they are in my eyes of design. The first one I would give as an example, something like Borderlands. And I haven't played Borderlands for a long time, so I might be misrepresenting it, and I do apologise. I'm sure the people in the comments will be like, well, actually, Chris, this is how it worked, and I'll believe them. But I think in Borderlands, regardless of the level of the enemy, even if they had like the skull next to the name and they were ridiculously high, you could still hurt them. But your damage was so minuscule, it might have taken you 10 years to kill them, which is a great incentive to fuck it off. But you could kill them. It's not recommended, but you could. You know, it's kind of like watching those dudes. I watched a person on the Neo beta who killed a boss at level 1 using his fists, and it took him 20 minutes. And my first reaction is, wow, that dude's pretty good to do this. And then my second reaction is, wow, this is boring as fuck. Why would you do this? But some people like to do that. He likes to do that, and he did that, and it's a nice show of skill and everything. But at least you can beat it. It doesn't get to the point where you're hitting it and hitting it and hitting it for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and it just cannot die. ReCore, unfortunately, is the latter. It is. You cannot kill things that are higher level than you, and I don't know why. And you can't even cheat the system by being smarter than the game. Because I went into the House of Steel, which is a level 25 dungeon. I was level 19. I did all of it fine, effortlessly. The game is not difficult, guys. It isn't, you know. Once you've played it a bit, you get it, and you'll do it. Trust me, you will. if you play it, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, because there's a reason that this game was budget release, because they know there's so many ostracizing things in it that I just don't think some people will put up with, because it's ridiculous. But I'm level 19, and I come into a fight against 3 of the ape gorilla dudes. 2 of them are red, 1 of them is yellow. The 2 red guys were level 25. That's 6 levels higher than me, but I could hurt them. They didn't have that symbol of the skull that says you cannot do shit. So I killed them effortlessly. They didn't kill me, they didn't even damage me, they didn't kill my companions, I bummed them. That's the end of the mission, by the way. Once you destroy all the cores, it stops it from radiating you. So just follow the pattern that I did and you'll be fine. So I kill those 2 dudes, and then the guy in the middle, I get the prompt to instantly kill him. But it didn't work. And I don't know why, because I had the instant kill, it should have worked, and it didn't work. And of course, it's because this game, when you come up against something that's out of your level range, you do not do any damage. They just resist it. They completely resist it. And I was actually quite afraid, because when I got to the final boss on the recording of this guide, it said it, I think the door said it was level 26, and I was only level 24. So I had fear, and legitimate fear, that I was going to come up across a final boss that I couldn't touch, and that I would have to grind levels. Oh, there's an example of being electrified, where you have to waggle the stick before you can move. If you get hit by that in a bad situation, you can die in seconds. But, once again, if that bad situation never happens, then you will never see how dangerous that can be, because this game is, as I've mentioned, it's incredibly poorly balanced. And it's poorly balanced because it's almost like they didn't anticipate the enemies to synchronize in the way that they very rarely do, but when they do, you know about it, as I get pushed off. And there's a couple of these glowing bugs down here that set you on fire if you shoot them too close. But they have this level parameter which completely kills momentum. And there are few things with an F, because that's how the English language was meant to be spoken. There are few things in games that goad me more than that. I think, as just 100% philosophy when it comes to game design, you should be able to, by skill rather than resource, be able to defeat anything if you are skilled enough, if you are experienced enough, if you are smart enough on how you play. I love a game that makes your character just as capable at day 1 as he is in day 15. The only thing that should change should be his tools, and his tools should all be balanced so that none of them give him an insane advantage, but each of them give the player an extra amount of flair to do interesting things. And that, to me, is the best kind of balance you can achieve. I cannot stand a game that tells me, oh, you can't hurt him, come back later. I hate that. That, to me, is the most arbitrary RPG bullshit that exists. Because all that is lazy. Instead of designing something that is challenging for the right reasons, they've made it challenging for the wrong reasons. And not only that, but they've wasted your time, because I'm making a guide here, guys. I want to show you a decisive way to beat this game. I don't want to sit around farming shitty robots to get like level 25 because the game wants me to. That's not cool. I want to be underleveled. I want to be weaker. I want these enemies to kill me really quick. I want them to be tougher. And I was a little bit concerned when I was recording this because I've not been upgrading my team. And on my first playthrough, my robots were so strong, I nearly stopped using them because I could just embarrass everything. Even the bosses, I was shit-stomping them. On this playthrough, I didn't upgrade them nowhere near as well as I did on the last one. And I didn't have half the cores I had because I just didn't do as many fights or as much exploration, so I had anticipations that I was going to have some tough times. And I didn't. Because the game isn't balanced right. And I mean that in both regards. There are times when you instantly die. There are times when dying is the last thing you will ever face because they just aren't competent enough. And in a game where all you do is platform and shoot robots, you would think one half of that would be stimulating enough to demand of the player to perhaps, you know, stay alive. And look how big our life bars are. Look at the damage some of the enemies do. The damage is legitimate. It's high damage. It's just all of these elements don't come together and coalesce into something that's threatening enough. Even the bosses. Like, I've got footage of a boss that went bad because I decided not to kill the lackeys and focus on the boss. Really bad idea. And even then, I was convincingly winning for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I got 2 stuns and I was dead because I couldn't move, and I got hit for half my life, and I got stunned again, and I got hit for the second half of my life. And I couldn't have jumped and dashed away from it because I did jump and dash and it still hit me. And it's just that moment of, wow, that's crazy. Why couldn't it be a little bit more like that, but involving and feel fair? And then on the next fight, I demolish everything and it's easy. And it's the fight that you're about to watch. We're going to hit this switch, and behind us, a bunch of enemies are going to spawn. And there's going to be a boss that is a Prismatic orb boss, and then there's going to be a bunch of scrubbers in the room who just annoy. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to focus on all the crappy dudes, get rid of them, and then I'm going to use my advanced combo with my extra damage to put some pain on the boss. And then once I stun him, I'm going to use the lethal attacks to hit him for some good damage. So now that he's stunned, you're going to see me calling Mac to do max attacks, and we're going to keep hitting his shield. And then once I realise that it's getting a little bit too out of hand, I'm going to focus on the spiders and the extra enemies here. And what this allows is not only does it enable me to boost my combo to do more damage on the boss, but it guarantees that this never escalates, because if it does, you can die very quickly. And you'll just see, like, we've already got the smart bomb procced, so I'm going to save it for an enemy that's near the boss, and then when I use it, it's going to do big damage to the boss. And all I'm doing is calling on Mac, we're getting the stun, we're using the charge attacks, I'm going to look to the yellow guy, and I'm going to instantly pull his core, potentially. Yep, that's going to stun his buddy. It's going to stun the boss as well. We're going to kill his buddy. We do have yellow, so swap to yellow. He puts a shield up, which is bad news. We need to break that with a shot. But I'm going to anchor him instead. And we're actually playing Tug of War, and the game's still giving me the tutorial, which is interesting. We're actually quite far into the game in the grand scheme of things. And then it's just us and the boss, so put his affinity on, hit him with some charges, use your buddies. Seth is so good in this game. Like, I didn't really like Seth because he looks like a twat, and I wasn't a big fan of the idea of his slow missiles, because I liked the immediacy of Mac's charge. But it turns out that you can use Seth in some interesting ways, and one of the ways that I was using him for is because he's completely unkillable. His defense is ridiculous, and if you level it up, he will never go down, so he can be a great distraction perpetually, and the things just can't kill him. And because he's a bit of a coward, he can run off at times, and he can lure them away, so you can get some really good openings. But the best way to use him, I found, is to proc his attack, which is these really slow missiles, and then you can swap him out while the missiles are in the sky. Get Mac in, or get Duncan or somebody, shoot a charge shot to stun the boss or stun the enemy, the missiles hit, and then you do a lethal attack with your new buddy who's just come in, and he comes and does big damage. And if you've got the ability to do the swapping characters attack, the missiles are in the air, you do the swap attack, you do the charge attack, and then he hits the missiles, and then he hits with lethal. There's nothing in this game that can survive these kind of combinations if you do them right. And if you've leveled up and you've got a really high gun level and your team is all powered up and stuff, you rob this game, you mug this game of any hope. Or something worth noting too that the game I don't think really explains. You see that electricity that's on the cable? If that electricity gets to Joule, you will fail the anchor point. So you want to kind of speed up if you don't have his core at that point. But we steal his core. I'm looking for some stuff to drop because I want to swap. I figure some of the enemies in this fight must be quite high level because it's quite a high level fight in the grand scheme of things. So this is me just doing some inventory management that shouldn't exist because the system is just profoundly baffling and makes no sense. And who knows, maybe there is a way to send the cores back to the crawler without going there, and I just didn't realise, so it's 100% my fault, and I will redact all the statements I've made against the game. Because to me, guys, it's not important who's right, it's important what's true, and it's important to represent things correctly. And there's a lot of people that get too stuck up in winning, you know, thinking that winning is more important than you know, what is the reality of it. And I think a lot of the systems in this game needed to be better. And even then, even if they were better, you would still be looking at a game that just doesn't quite hit its stride the way it should have. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.